Well, thank you everybody for coming this morning. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Pathfinder Group and the Martin Dow Group to the annual Pakistan breakfast at Davos. Obviously, we had to take a 2-year break because of the pandemic, but this has been an annual fixture at Davos, going back many decades, where we had the pleasure to host, obviously, Bhutto as well, and we've had the honor to host every year the Pakistani leaders at such an august moment. Before I go into introductions, I'd like to hand over to our co-host Ali Akhai to say a few words, and then to Jeremy Jervis.
Thank you. Honorable Chief Guest Bilawal Zardari, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Pakistan, Chairman Pathfinder Group Mr. Zarrar Sehgal, Co-Chairman Pathfinder Group Zarrar Sehgal, esteemed guests and visitors, good morning and welcome back to Davos. It's good to be here again as your co-host for the Pakistan breakfast. As I'm here today, I wonder what my father, the founding chairman of Martin Dow Group, Akhai, would have said. He was a patriotic who felt strongly about the people of Pakistan and never missed an opportunity to showcase Pakistan's achievement at any forum. We were here for the first time in 2013 when Martin Dow was selected as a global growth company. We are the only multinational pharmaceutical group from Pakistan representing at the World Economic Forum and operating beyond borders in France, which leads us to achieve the status of a local multinational in its truest sense. Over the years, our relationship with the World Economic Forum has greatly deepened. My father believed that building trust is the key to success in creating a safe and more integrated world. A great example of this is our partnership with the Pathfinder Group. Over the last 6 years, Martin Dow and Pathfinder Group have worked together to present the true potential of our country at this forum through informative and open dialogues. After the outbreak of COVID, we feared that Pakistan would be a potential hotspot because of its high population density of over 210 million. But due to the efforts of our committed healthcare professionals, the country was able to tackle the challenges with very mild repercussions. As lauded by the United Nations and the World Bank, Pakistan's response to the pandemic has achieved greater success than any other country in the region, only because we managed to keep livelihoods intact and overall socio-economic situation of the country stable. At Martin Dow, we were similarly innovative. The Martin Dow family came together to support its colleagues fully. We worked to strengthen our bonds and let everyone know that we are together during any crisis situation. We knew we had to adjust to the new normal in order to move ahead. Quick planning and implementation was key as the organization coped better than our expectation. A job very well done by our colleagues and our management's leadership. The way we handled this crisis can be the subject of a management study. While many businesses and companies were cutting back and laying off colleagues, Martin Dow Group invested in the company and employee welfare without any layoffs. We had innovative solutions for colleagues' physical and mental well-being. We held online and in-person events and training sessions that promoted our employees' mental peace and stability. Ultimately, ensuring their job security was one of our top priorities. We returned to the pre-pandemic ways of working from the new normal in March this year and are now functioning at full capacity. The last 2 years fighting COVID-19 have transformed us completely. We now believe in work from home amongst other innovative working methods that pushed us to change the mindset of our management and colleagues. This has also opened up many avenues to learn and to adapt, to bring forward gender-focused solutions. We introduced the concept of working remotely, due to which more women were able to join our workforce. Moving back our conversation to Pakistan, it is interesting to see how post-COVID-19, despite the geopolitical situation in the region and the country, everything is business as usual. This signifies the trust that we have in our country. However, it should be noted that the world has been constantly evolving and keeps changing during a crisis situation. Therefore, it's imperative for us to strive and work together for a sustainable future for all. So, after 2 years of pandemic, where are we today? I can only say that we are settling and learning more with each passing day. COVID-19 demanded us to push our boundaries and venture where we wouldn't have before. We can say with certainty that the upcoming year is a higher standard of competition in quality, localization, consolidation, digitization, and adaptability. In the past 2 years, we have revolutionized manufacturing and logistics, especially in the healthcare sector, through the responses that our frontline professionals have provided us. I owe immense gratitude to all healthcare professionals for their hard work and cooperation. Acknowledging my late father's vision and his consistent support in the past, I pledge to work with the international community in Davos to tackle crucial initiatives that will make this world a more sustainable place to live in. I am very thankful to our leadership and each one of you for your precious time in coming together for Pakistan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ali. And obviously, one reason we've partnered very well up with the Martin Dow Group is that as a company, we share the same social ethic, the Pathfinder Group as well. Instead of laying off people, we actually invested in people, hired more people, and gave bonuses, in fact, to our staff as well. And a lot of their hard work, you can see some of the staff that's here as well in putting this together. So thank you again, and obviously that's what makes us great partners. I would like to now turn to Jeremy Jurgens, or Jurgens as we would say in the United States, from the WEF, to say a few words. Thank you, Jeremy.
Great, thank you. So it's a pleasure to be back here with so many friends. This is becoming an annual event, and it's probably the best breakfast we have every Davos. Now, it's been 2.5 years since we did meet, and it's a great opportunity here to be able to receive the ministers, so many guests, and I'd like to thank particularly the Pathfinder Group and also the Martin Dow Group for organizing this breakfast. And I would be remiss if I didn't also thank Ikram, our dear friend and long-term ambassador to the Davos community as well as the world for Pakistan. Now, we've all had a chance to see the program. History is at a turning point. We're facing, I won't say an unprecedented number, but definitely a large number of very deep and severe challenges. We've still not out of the COVID crisis. Well, we're in a better situation than we have been. It's still not finished. Many individuals are at risk. We continue to see concerns around the new variants. And there's a high level of uncertainty in how this might evolve. We as well are all well aware of the conflict in Ukraine and the disruption that has led to. We have supply chain disruptions. We have fragilities in our global food system where millions of people are at risk of malnourishment and starvation. As well, the deepest energy crisis since the 1970s. We now move into a summer in the Northern Hemisphere, but high levels of uncertainty of what this will look like as we head into the next winter season, and where energy is now competing for basic necessities between manufacturing, production, and other livelihoods. And we've also experienced a heat wave more recently. We see extreme temperatures that would normally only come 2 months later in Pakistan and other parts of South Asia as a harbinger of a deeper global climate crisis that we still don't necessarily have alignment on how to address. This is a relatively dark backdrop that we face here. Nonetheless, I'm actually very positively surprised to see how many leaders have come to Davos to actively work and address each of those issues. The World Economic Forum supports the ability to address these challenges through 5 centers. We have our Center on Global and Regional Agenda. We have a Center on the New Economy. We have a Center on Industry Transformation, and as well on the 4th Industrial Revolution. And each of these centers has active programs at work in Pakistan. I can highlight our work that we're doing on digital inclusion with the Edison Alliance. We're working to improve the digital affordability, usability, and accessibility so that people can fully benefit from the digital economy. We also have launched a skills accelerator in Pakistan to be able to help skill up all the workers who need to adapt to the changes that are needed in the digital economy. Pakistan as well is participating in our 1 trillion trees program and has already made a commitment to plant 800 million trees, making a very strong contribution to this larger effort. So across the board, wherever we look, we can see not only global response to address this multitude of challenges, but also deep partnerships with our friends and colleagues in Pakistan to have specific improvements or opportunities that will benefit the Pakistani people. So I'd like to thank all of you in this room that are participating, and if you're not yet participating, please contact me or one of my colleagues, and we'd welcome you to engage. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for those kind words about Pakistan, and obviously we certainly appreciate the involvement of WEF in Pakistan as well. You've been a partner for us, and especially in the areas of digital financial inclusion, I think there's a lot to do. We have a large unbanked population that we're trying to get into the ambit of banking. There's a number of senior bankers over here from Pakistan, and so we do want to push. There's a youth explosion in Pakistan that needs to be brought into the financial system for various different needs, and I think the WEF will play a critical role over there alongside with the private and the public enterprise. I'd like to now introduce our chief guest, the youngest foreign minister of Pakistan, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. He is the chairperson of the PPP. He has a rich family legacy, but I will not dwell too much on it because I think the focus should be on him today and the achievements that he has had to date. Just a brief bio, if I may. He had studied at Oxford and Christchurch. More importantly, he went to the Karachi Grammar School, where he got his real foundation set, and we think it's prepared him well for the future. I think what struck me is, in some ways, when you look at Pakistan, and I know forgive me if people have heard it before, most of our population, almost 65%, is under 30. That is both a potential dividend for the world and also a potential issue. And I think in there, somebody like our federal minister, foreign minister, comes into representing that youth of Pakistan. Because I think in some ways you're in sync. That's why I don't want to talk about legacy and what happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Because I think the idea is Pakistan is at a crossroads right now. It's at a precipice. It is a country that is screaming for investment, infrastructure, energy. I could talk about the startup scene that's in Pakistan. Over 300 million invested in startups last year, over 100 million in the first 3 months of this year alone. So and that is nothing. It is a drop in the ocean. If I tell somebody, that this is how much the Pakistan startup scene, they'll be like, well, why isn't it more? And I think this is where somebody like you plays a critical role. And I think what I've been personally impressed by your track record is, I think in some ways, although you're a modern politician, but you're also a throwback to the old social democrat. You believe in a strong social net. You believe in protection for the poor. You have been very vocal on the protection of minorities in Pakistan. And that is part of the fundamental vision of our founder, Jinnah. The protection of minorities was critical to his vision of Pakistan. There is a reason our flag is what it is with the white. I mean, so for me, all those elements make me very excited about the future with you. I think another area you have been extremely productive on is women's rights. I think, obviously, I think there maybe your maternal background comes into play as well, but you've been very, very positive on women's rights. You've talked about the role of female empowerment, female education, and how critical that is to the growth of Pakistan, not just of women, but just of the whole country as well. I mean, there's 50% of the population there waiting to be productive for Pakistan, and I think this is where I think you can make a real difference. I'll let you talk about foreign policy, yourself, and this is obviously why you're here at the WEF, among other reasons. But I did want to highlight these things because to me, it's a combination of your socio-economic vision with your protection of minorities, and also you've been a constant defender of the freedom of the press, even though sometimes the press is not very kind to you. But you have constantly, and I really appreciate that. You stand up and you've spoken out against censorship in all ways, and it's not easy because we're all human. Sometimes we can delve into, somebody's calling us names. I mean, obviously there's but to your credit, you've always defended the press as well, and for that I appreciate it. So with that, I turn it to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here at Davos, and particularly at this Pathfinder breakfast. I've had the opportunity to visit once before, and have always been very impressed with the Pakistani business community's efforts to represent Pakistan and promote our potential. I don't have any prepared remarks, but what I would like to do is sort of present to you what our global challenges are on the international stage, what some challenges are on the domestic front. But what I want to highlight is the immense potential that despite these challenges, that we can unlock economically, for trade, for the business community, and for the average Pakistani. So starting off, whether it's on the international level or on the domestic level, we are at a crossroads for history. Geostrategic developments on the international stage, whether it is Ukraine, whether it is Afghanistan, impacts the way in which the world will progress. And it is particularly at this point in human history, when humanity is facing not one but many existential threats. One, in the form of the COVID pandemic, which is indeed not over, but we hope the worst is behind us, and the ever increasing and very real threat of climate change that is leading to climate crises and catastrophes in countries that didn't benefit yet or didn't sort of share the fruits of industrialization, but are now bearing the brunt of climate change, countries such as Pakistan. At this crossroads, we can either take the path that it looks like is being taken, where instead of ending conflict, resolving conflict, and engaging in dispute resolution through dialogue and diplomacy, we can create more conflicts. Having, particularly for the international audience here today, Pakistan has suffered and witnessed decade after decade of conflict in Afghanistan, and no matter what one feels about the current regime in Afghanistan, ultimately that dispute, that dialogue and diplomacy led to the current conclusion. And the message that Pakistan, who sympathizes, empathizes, and empathetically feels what the people of Ukraine are going through, because we've seen conflict up close, we've seen violence up close, we know what it means to lose our loved ones to senseless, aggressive violence. We understand and empathize what they're going through, but our message to the international community would be that ultimately, if not today, tomorrow, this conflict has to be resolved through dialogue and diplomacy. And we have to ask ourselves, what will history say of us? What will history say of us that when humanity was faced with such existential crisis, what did we decide to do? Did we unite as humanity in the face of these existential threats? Or will history record that we went down the path of conflict? We went down the path of war. We've seen this before, and the trajectory, the trajectory of if it goes down the path that people unfortunately expect, have devastating consequences for a country like Pakistan. We believe, being a relatively smaller developing country, that if there's international order, if there's an international rule-based system, if the United Nations and other international institutions function, it's not only in the larger interest of countries like ours, but it's in the larger interest of solving such conflicts. On the domestic front, we're suffering from a similar crisis. We too are at a crossroads of history. And when our country is facing existential crisis, including the ones I just mentioned, but also the risk of severe economic, how to say this diplomatically, severe economic consequences, not just for Pakistan, but this is not sort of an average situation. This has immense implications for the average people of Pakistan, where we are standing at a crossroads of our democracy, where we're standing at a crossroads of the progress and directions of our institutions. Will they remain constitutional or will they continue to be controversial? Pakistan also has a path to choose. We can either choose to be a modern Muslim country, making our mark as a rational, reasonable player on the world stage that can unlock its potential, or we can continue fighting the same old fights we fought decade after decade at the expense of the people of Pakistan. While we see at the international level or at the domestic level, you're either with us or against us, has irreparably damaged international foreign policy and our domestic politics. Looking for I win, you lose solutions on the international level or on the domestic level has irreparably damaged hopefully not irreparably damaged, but has severely damaged international foreign policy and has damaged us domestically, politically, economically, in terms of our democracy. The way forward on the international level and on the domestic level is to a return to win-win diplomacy, concessions, compromises, and leadership in order to find the best way forward for your people, for a prosperous future. And if domestically, at least, we take that path of unity in the face of existential threats and otherwise continuing our political bickering on the sidelines, there is so much to unlock in Pakistan. We are practically, economically, we have so much potential. And this is untapped potential. And in a world where people are trying to come up with new ideas, with new spaces, Pakistan has the potential to be a beacon of growth, not only for its own citizens, but to unlock untapped potential, economic potential in our region. One depends on the direction of the geopolitical developments in the region and internationally, And one domestically depends on what we decide to do as a nation. If we can get our act together domestically and show that we take difficult economic decisions in the interest of our people to protect the long-term economic viability of our country and to ensure progress and prosperity, not just for the elite, but for all of society, if we can display to our domestically and internationally that Pakistan is a functioning state that takes decisions in its own interest, if we can show that we're willing to help ourselves, then I have just been on a whirlwind tour internationally. And anybody who's willing, if Pakistan can demonstrate that you're willing to help yourself, because no one wants to help anyone who's not willing to help themselves. If Pakistan can demonstrate that we're willing to help ourselves, then the international community also understands the potential that there is in Pakistan. On a as far as our regional situation is concerned, there's different geopolitical conflicts. I don't want to go into too much detail, but suffice it to say that Pakistan has its neighbor and old brother friend, China, to the north. We have India to the east. We have Iran and Afghanistan to our west. And we don't even maximize our trade with China. The potential that Pakistan has for trade with China is more than the world is seeing today. There's a perpetual conflict aggravated, I'm afraid, by a certain mindset in the government in India that has created an environment that is very difficult for us to even engage, for us to even talk. But one day, we will get to the position where, if the international institutions that I referred to earlier play their role and we live by an international rules-based order, if we're able to resolve certain conflicts that have plagued us and continue to concern us, there will be a day where we'll be engaged with our neighbors to the east, not just diplomatically, but also economically. Geopolitical reasons have meant that even our neighbors to the west, whether it's Iran or Afghanistan, we've been unable to unlock, let's say to the very least, our economic potential with those countries. So I want you to imagine a world where we're living in an international rules-based order, where international norms and international institutions are not aggravating conflicts, not relegated to the sidelines, but playing an active role in resolving disputes and creating solutions to geopolitical conflicts. Then Pakistan, just in that context, imagine the world where we're trading with all our neighbors, where we unlock the economic potential of Pakistan in our regional geographical context. Now that day has to come. Aaj nahi to kal. That day has to come. And the world sees that. I believe that the world understands that if Pakistan is engaging as a rational player and is not as an irrational player, if Pakistan is engaging as a responsible player and not as an irresponsible player, then why would the United States not want to have their citizens and their business community invest in Pakistan and vice versa when it comes to trade, when it comes to energy, when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to tech? Why would any country want to cut their nose and spite their face and not be on the ground from today? So that ultimately, whoever gets in now, that day when we unlock our full economic potential, we will all benefit from the fruits of that prosperity. And domestically, this room shows you the potential that Pakistan has. This Pakistan pavilion presenting Pakistan's economic potential, business potential to the world year after year, and I've been here, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, consistently does not enjoy the support of the Pakistani government. They do this on their own as a result of their patriotism, as their result for their love for their country, and this is the potential that we want to unlock for Pakistan. We have a business community, entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, as you were talking about, 65% of our population under the age of 35. When I'm at Davos, at an international community event, I'm not only representing Pakistan, I'm not only representing the developing world, or a Muslim majority country in the developing world, but I'm representing a new generation that does not want to be bogged down internationally or domestically by the baggage of the past, and who wants to unlock our true potential. We have, as far as the youth potential is concerned, everybody's seen big company business potential. I've engaged with the younger generation of businessmen in Pakistan, whether that is a new generation taking on their families' legacies, or new entrepreneurs coming into the market. I tell you, this generation is going to be the generation that works together to lift us out of this mess that we have inherited. I have seen firsthand in Sindh, the Chief Minister of Sindh is sitting right in front of you here. Okay, despite terrorism, despite the do's and fro's of domestic politics, despite issues with our media perception, to put it lightly, how, when the public sector works with the private sector, we have done wonders. When we're allowed to work, when we're not undermined for one political reason or another, we have worked with the business community to create infrastructure. The largest bridge on the Indus, the Mulakatia bridge, is a public-private partnership. We have worked with the business community to unlock energy potential when it comes to the Sindh Anglo Coal Mining Company and the Thar Coal Initiative. And I witnessed firsthand, and I understand that coal is unpopular, and we'll get to that. We do want to move to green and energy efficient stuff. I've seen firsthand how the lives of women in the area have changed, how women battling maternal mortality and infant mortality are now employed from everywhere, from truck drivers to the first female engineer at the local coal power plant. We've seen before our eyes how this public-private partnership, unlocking the business potential, has changed the lives of the people in the region. And we want to continue with this model. We want to continue to work with the business community, with the young entrepreneurs, to join forces with government. And if we can make Thar Coal initiative, the Thar Coal initiative is as successful as it has been, if our biggest selling point, as far as the Sindh government is concerned, is that even that our public-private initiative projects have been endorsed by international publications like The Economist. If we work with the business community now to work on green solutions, on green energies, imagine public-private partnerships in every district for solar power to help relieve 16 hours, 18 hours load shedding that we experience in rural areas. Public-private initiatives backed by a supportive federal government, unlocking the thousands of megawatts wind power potential that we have in the wind corridor in Karachi. Imagine public-private partnerships, agar hum tharko, if we can do a public-private partnership as far as energy is concerned, then we can do public-private partnership as far as our other utility needs are concerned. Imagine public-private partnership with desalination plants or other utility needs or infrastructure needs of cities like Karachi. I could go on and on. Our agriculture community is with just a little bit of investment and support from the government direct to the farmer rather than the middleman. We can not only address our own food insecurity issues, we can contribute to helping alleviate the food insecurity issues in the region. Our water insecurity issues can also be unlocked by just working with people, with the business community, with the people who see Pakistan positively and not through the negative light. I've gone on quite a lot, but just to conclude abruptly, if, whether it's internationally or domestically, we put the interests of everyone over the interests of a few, if we prioritize what is in the good of the many over individual political considerations, we can unlock our potential domestically in a way that has never been done before. And internationally, all we can do is advocate, all we can do is hope that the world understands that Pakistan is coming from its own experiences, and and play our role to try and encourage dialogue and diplomacy. But if in whatever way we can push the international community to take the fork in the road that is one where we unite rather than further divide humanity, if we do whatever we can to move in a positive direction as far as Pakistan's geopolitical complications are concerned, then we can unlock the true economic potential of Pakistan regionally. And that day is the day I will not only be able to promise prosperity to my people and all of my people, but I will be able to promise prosperity to our region. And I hope and pray that we can work together to ensure that that day is at least achieved in my lifetime. Because I know that generation after generation, people have worked towards that goal. But the potential that I have seen in the youth of Pakistan, it leads me to believe that surely it will be our generation that realizes that day. Once again, I am immensely grateful to those, all of you who organized this event and continue to play your part for Pakistan. I hope that going forward, the Pakistani government, the federal government, will be able to work in closer coordination with you to enhance the scope of what we can do here. And I am at least very keen to ensure that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs plays its part for that. There's no reason why the government should not be working more with individuals such as yourself who spend such of time, effort and money to promote Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Foreign Minister, for those optimistic and positive words. I think sometimes Prime Minister Bhutto used to have a wonderful phrase, the din of democracy, but sometimes the din of democracy drowns out the economic potential of Pakistan as well. So I always remember that phrase she used to use. We'll take some questions, but before we do that, I'd like to just acknowledge a few people who've also spent their time and effort to come. Obviously, we want to acknowledge the Chief Minister of Sindh. Thank you, sir, for coming. The members of the Sindh government as well who are here. Thank you very much as well. We are very optimistic about the potential of Sindh. We think there's massive potential for infrastructure development, for development in the energy sector, roads, rail, otherwise. And I think there's tremendous potential, and you're doing a fabulous job. I'd like to also acknowledge our Federal Minister Shahir Rahman. Thank you very much. You obviously talk about an issue that is near and dear to all our hearts, climate change. I know the coal issue is sensitive, but we'll keep it in the background. So thank you again for coming as well. I'd like to acknowledge Ross Perot Jr., a friend of Pakistan. He's been a constant friend throughout all our Pakistan breakfasts as well. And so thank you very much for coming, sir. Obviously, our old friends, Syed Daud and Mrs. Daud, thank you again for coming as well. So I'd like to acknowledge them. I know he doesn't want me to acknowledge him, but my father, Zarrar Sehgal, who is very passionate. But, it's weird. He's my father, so I can't say too much. But I've never met a businessman so less interested in a return on investment. So at some point, the definition of profit is very different at the Pathfinder Group. But I want to acknowledge all his tireless efforts, all my family members, my mother, my sister Nefer, my family members who are. My wife Kashmala, who couldn't be here, Nali Akhai's wife as well, so our better halves couldn't come because of school and other reasons. They couldn't make it, so I want to acknowledge them as well. So with that, I'll pause and we'll take questions. I don't know if there's a mic here or why don't we, sorry if the light is blinding me and I can't see you, but if there's a question.
I am Adil Mansoor. I am from Lahore.
Okay.
I have the honor to meet your Nana 4 times in Lahore. And first time when he started the People's Party, I was there with him. And I have the honor to be beaten by the police at that time also. And I'm so pleased that you are foreign minister and he also started his career as foreign minister. My only question is to you is that he gave his life for freedom of Pakistan and for independent Pakistan. I would like to know about your thinking and your comments. That will you like to see Pakistan an independent country?
Not only on the international level, sir, but on the domestic front. And for us to be truly independent, we have to be empowered to be democratic at home, so we can choose our own leaders democratically and not have them imposed on us undemocratically. Because of course, it is that very problem that has held us back so far. And as far as on the international front is concerned, the Pakistan People's Party, whether it was in the time of my grandfather, whether it was in the time of Shaheed Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto, whether it was from 2008 to 2013, has demonstrated time and time again that we will not compromise on Pakistan's national interests. We will engage with everyone positively, but we have, whenever the time has tested this, we have always sided on ensuring that Pakistan's sovereignty, Pakistan's national position is never compromised, but we're always empowered and only empowered to do that when we have a democratic mandate and with democratically legitimate government. The reason why in 2000, let's look back at 2008 and 2013 in case people have forgotten. This is a time when we engaged with the world, where we were talking about trade and economic activity. In fact, the slogan of trade not aid that drives me today came about then. And we engaged with the world, whether it was America, whether it was China, whether it was the Middle East, across the board in the greater interest of Pakistan. And when the Salalah attack happened, which was a very unfortunate incident, where officers in the armed forces of Pakistan were martyred at the Salalah post. And we had the democratic legitimacy to demand that until the United States apologizes, we will shut NATO supply lines to Afghanistan. And the reason that we were respected by the international community and not scoffed at was because they knew that we had the mandate of the people, we were a democratic, legitimate government, and we were taking a principled stance. And we weren't playing personal politics. And because we have the backing of Parliament, because we have the backing of democratic institutions, it was the first time in history that I can recall that a sitting Secretary of State of the United States did regret and apologize for the incidents which allowed us to resolve that long-standing dispute. But if I was to invent a fictional international conspiracy, then I would lose the respect not only of myself, but I would be damaging the international standing of my country. So one has to conduct themselves in such a way domestically and internationally that it enhances Pakistan's position. As far as Pakistan as an independent country, we are an independent country. We are an independent country. We just have to free ourselves. We have to give freedom of speech to our citizens. We have to protect the right to vote of our individuals. We have to give freedom to our parliamentarians to function in a democratic parliament. We have to give freedom to our institutions to work constitutionally and not insist on them working controversially and unconstitutionally. And then we are independent and free as envisaged by the founder of our country and as envisaged by our constitution as a federal Islamic democratic country. And on the international stage, there is no reason, if we conduct our foreign policy wisely, that we cannot protect Pakistan's interests, stand up for injustice where we see it, but always engage with the international community in good times and in bad to ensure that we work with the international community and not remain isolated at the expense of our own vision.
Any other questions? Please identify yourself as well first.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for your very inspiring vision and words. My name is Sushant Balagothi. I'm here in two capacities. I'm with Agility, a major investor in Pakistan in supply chains. And I'm also here as a board member of Seeds of Peace. And I have a proposal for you. Seeds of Peace is a non-profit foundation which is training young youth from Pakistan with the skills required to advance diplomacy over difference, to advance dialogue over divide. And we bring youth from Pakistan every year to international programs, together with youth from the GCC, from India, and other parts of the world. And you spoke about the demographic dividend of Pakistan. And we will need that demographic dividend of Pakistan to be your cadre of diplomats in the future, to not only within the government, but within private sector, academia, civil society, to advance your message of optimism and hope. So we'd love to continue our partnership with Pakistan, maybe work with you together to enable your vision.
Thank you. I'm so very impressed by what you just said, and it's so inspiring to see that people are working, particularly with the younger generation, to pursue a path to peace. The Foreign Office would be more than happy to engage with yourself and see how we can further enhance such activities and work with those young people that you're working with as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
Your Excellency, John de Blasio, partners with the Pathfinder Group in Pakistan. We provide the diplomatic security there for the U.S. Embassy. My question has to do with Afghanistan.
Sure.
And the future of Afghanistan and Pakistan's relationship. At what point do you think it will be appropriate to recognize the Taliban? And what does Pakistan want to see from its relationship with Afghanistan in the future?
I'm not in an incredible hurry to recognize the new Taliban regime in Afghanistan. What I am in a hurry about is to help relieve the humanitarian crisis that the people of Afghanistan are experiencing, and extremely agitated about trying to avert a complete and utter economic collapse in Afghanistan. For I believe that a festering economic crisis and the threat of complete economic collapse in Afghanistan has serious repercussions, not only for the people of Afghanistan, but for the people of Pakistan, for our region, and heaven forbid, the international community. It is shameful that we are unfortunately repeating the mistakes of history. They say that history repeats itself, first as a tragedy and then as a farce. And if we allow history to repeat itself now, it would make a mockery of those who sacrificed their lives in this conflict. We need to first and foremost alleviate the humanitarian crisis, ensure that we avert an economic collapse, which requires the United States to reconsider its decision to freeze the funds of the Afghan people. At the same time, we expect from whoever is in government in Afghanistan, and particularly from the regime there now, that they live up to their commitments to the international community, that they do not allow their soil to be used for terrorism. They live up to the expectation and the promise they made to the girls and the women of Afghanistan, that they will have their right to education and have their right to contribute to society. Not because, and I don't say this because, or only because they've promised this to us and they've promised this to the world. I say this because these are rights granted to the women of Islam by Islam. These are not any rights for anyone to bestow on us or bestow on the women of the Muslim world. This is their right. The first word in the Quran is Iqra, read. It does not say just men read. We in Pakistan, the Muslims of Pakistan, the Muslim women of Pakistan, have already elected their first female prime minister. Not once, not twice, but they would have done it a third time if the very same mindset and terrorist forces that had assassinated her didn't have their way. So we expect the regime in Afghanistan to grant the women of Afghanistan, which is their due, to live up to the international expectations. But we cannot hold the people of Afghanistan hostage until they live up to those expectations. We must act and act now And it is my belief, my personal belief, that the reason we're seeing an increased tendency to focus on such issues by the current regime is that with the steady aggravating of the humanitarian and economic situation, these sort of steps, unfortunately, have a risk of increasing. I feel there'd be more space for us to ensure that they deliver on the promises they made to the international community, including to Pakistan, if there's some movement on alleviating the economic and humanitarian crisis. Otherwise, as with autocrats and as with regimes across history, when the people are hungry, then rulers tend to find ways and means to distract their people. And if you're in ancient Rome, that's the Colosseum and the gladiators. If you're an autocrat in an unnamed country somewhere and your people are facing famine, you may decide it's better to explain or distract your population by confining women, minorities, etc., coming up with a culture war. So I believe, and despite my own personal history, my political ideology, my manifesto, it is very the antithesis of what the current regime in Afghanistan represents. But I will work day and night, particularly in my new capacity as the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, to do whatever I can to alleviate the humanitarian crisis and the economic crisis, and divert the economic crisis in Afghanistan. Because I worry if these crises fester, if they're not addressed, then the situation will get worse, not better for the women of Afghanistan. The situation on, as far as the capacity and/or/will to combat terrorist groups and terrorist activity in my country, within Afghanistan, and heaven forbid in the region, will increase, not decrease, if we don't address this crisis. And the chances of an inclusive government, or them living up to their demand of the inclusive government, is absolutely sort of very limited unless, again, these issues are addressed. So that's my point of view.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I'll take one more question.
Thank you very
Last
much.
question.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. My name is Peter Beschet. I'm a colonel from the German army. And it was very promising what you said, Foreign Minister. I was in Afghanistan. And also the Germans invest a lot, especially not militarily, but in the, let's say, the civil society. We built up schools, we supported women. And now after 20 years, we have a frustration in Germany, saying, hey, what was worse? Didn't we understand the culture? Probably yes. Therefore, it was very encouraging what you said, and I hope, because what I learned is the key of peace for Afghanistan is in Pakistan. That means, so do you support the lines, not maybe with the current regime, the Taliban, but with other people in the society, that your ideas become reality for the whole region? Because what I learned, Afghanistan is also a very resource-rich country. They need not to be poor. And that's what we don't understand. So thank you very much for your speech.
Thank you, sir. I think as far as the past in Afghanistan, how the conflict was handled, how we reached this conclusion, that's the past now. And we have to live with the reality of the situation. I empathize with you. I empathize with the men and women of Afghanistan who sacrificed for 10 years in the hopes of a better future, to the men and women who sacrificed their lives along with them, defending those ideal, and those of us in Pakistan who is by no choice of our own were drawn into this conflict and suffered as a result. But we are now dealing with the reality of Afghanistan today. I take issue with the idea, and I don't blame you, it's an international sort of frame of mind, that the keys for peace in Afghanistan are in the hands of Pakistan. The keys to Afghan's future in the hands of Afghanistan. We can only help and support them in the way that I mentioned, but there's a lot of misery in Afghanistan, but to quote my mother, there is too much misery in Pakistan for us to get obsessed with the issues of Afghanistan. Humanitarian crisis, yes. Economic collapse, yes. I will not carry the baggage or the brief of the new regime in Afghanistan over the interests of my people. I will continue to advocate for the people of Afghanistan because we consider ourselves as their brothers. They are our neighbors. We have a shared future and a shared history. And I hope and I pray that the governments and their regime, whether it's today or tomorrow, manage to unlock their potential. And I hope and pray that the governments and the political parties and the various institutions that have a say in Pakistan can come together to help us unlock the potential of my country. Thank you.
With that, unfortunately, we will have to conclude this. Thank you very much, Foreign Minister, for your time. We really appreciate it. This was an enlightening experience for all of us. I really appreciate it. So thank you again for coming. I'd like to thank the members of the Pathfinder Group also, who worked tirelessly to put this event together. Unseen at the back, but our partners again, Martin Dow, thank you very much for co-hosting it. I'll leave you with one bite. I believe in Pakistan. I believe in the potential of Pakistan. I believe there are so many elements of Pakistan that we haven't even spoken about at a forum like this that are vibrant. We have an art scene that is second to none. We export art, whether it be in music, whether it be in painting, sculptures, dramas, I mean, you name it. We have an unbanked population that is screaming to be part of the financial sector. That will be a force multiplier with elements that the state bank has introduced, like the Assam mobile account and so forth. We have an agricultural sector, which, by the way, we can yield crops at a much higher level when you compare them to what's happening abroad. To your point, we can not just be food sufficient, but be food exporters. We have an industrial sector that, with the right investment, we also have other elements that are owned by the state that can be privatized. So I think there are absolutely there is a lot of potential in Pakistan that remains untapped. With that, thank you again. Pakistan Zindabad.